Hello everybody, welcome back to the Vlogmas It's Christmas series. It is day number 4 and I thought today I would look at some tips that I personally would suggest for saving up to Christmas. Now this is applicable for everyone, whether you are a student, whether you are someone who works, whatever, and hopefully this will make your Christmas in 2025 and in the future maybe a bit better and make it a bit more financially easy, because Christmas is a time of year where a lot of people can spend and a lot of people end up in debt. And actually, it was really interesting yesterday because I had a lecture and we literally did this, and I think it was like 26% of 18 to 24-year-olds end up in debt. Or, yes, 26, so about 1 in 4 end up in debt just from spending on Christmas. So I thought, let's get started with that now, and I want to give a couple of tips on how I would do that. Okay, so tip number 1 is reflecting on the year before. Now, what I would suggest with this is having a look at how much you've spent in 2024, 2023, etc. on Christmas and trying to lay it out. So for example, you might be factoring things like parents, children, so that might be and other family members as well, friends, but also other things. So obviously these are kind of your gifts, but with Christmas, there's a lot more than just the gifts. You have, say for example, days out. So you might want to factor in days out. I know some people, for example, buy advent calendars and they spend quite a bit on them, and that's kind of like a bit of like a self-care sort of thing for themselves. Obviously pets as well. I didn't even think about pets. Your foods, obviously like what you're needing, wrapping, so like wrapping and cards, and all this can really add up quickly, depending on how you do it. And so it's a case really you need to just reflect on all of this and whatever else you may celebrate for Christmas, and then I would always suggest adding that all up. Now if you add that all up on what you should have, that is kind of like, if you assume that you're probably going to spend roughly the exact same the following year, which typically can be the case, that is what will help with my second tip. But also what I would suggest is adding a little bit extra on. Obviously we've got inflation, but also because additional people end up in your lives. Obviously some people will leave your lives, and some people you might not bother with, some people you might want to get more for, and so in that sense add a little bit on just in case, and whatever's left you can keep for the following year. Okay, so tip number 2 is setting your goals for Christmas. Now I've kind of already discussed this, don't want me to get a pen now. So as I said, what you will want to do is add all this up to set your goals and add a little bit on. Now this obviously is personal for everyone, so I know a lot of people will often say, save say £500 or 1,000. But if you look at your things and you think, I'm only spending 100, that is your goal. Similarly, if your goal is more than 1,000, again, that is your goal. And what I'm going to now pretty much be talking about for the rest of this is how to achieve that goal. And that is kind of, I think, one of the most challenging parts, because what typically happens is, say for example, this is your timeline between now and then. And what typically happens is you're fine here and you're fine here when the motivation's quite high, and if you make it at the end, but it's this long slog that makes it really challenging. So I'm going to talk about that with my next couple of tips. Okay, so tip number 3 is start as early as you can. And I'm also going to interlink this in with the 4th tip, which is make it regular. So the reason I'm putting this video out now is to kind of make people aware about Christmas. Because I remember, especially when I worked in retail, you'd bring a lot of stuff out in, July, August, and people wouldn't buy it and they'd be like, oh, I'll just get it closer to the time. And then when they get closer to the time, they complain that they're having to spend so much, when realistically, if we try and start as early as possible, it does actually spread the cost out and it makes it a little bit easier. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be spending from, say, January, July sort of thing, but just having those savings goals and continuously saving. So I would always suggest realistically trying to start as early as January. you know, pretty much once Christmas is over, saving for the next Christmas. The luxury I have is like, I'm going to show an example of what I do. This is the cash stuffing method. Now, I don't have the poster for it, but basically I would pop maybe a £5 or a £10 in here every week or two, and that would add up. And I've only got 200 place orders in now because I had 300. I've spent 100 this Christmas and I'm all finished now, which is absolutely fantastic. And to be fair with you, I did budget about £100 for this Christmas. I think last year I only spent about 60, but this year I knew there was a couple of additional things that were coming ahead that I knew I needed to budget for. And also there's a couple of people who I didn't expect to be buying for, but obviously they were more or less factored in anyways. And so starting in, for example, so if I get my notebook back out, if we're started in January, and let's say your goal was to save £500, if you put £10 away every single week, or £40, 40 to 50 a month, depending on whether it was a good month. If you're in a month where you're maybe not earning as much as say another month, because I know some people have different types of paychecks, months you're doing better off, put 50 in, months you're doing less well, put 40 in, and then by the end of it you should realistically get to those goals. Obviously, as well as that, if you, for example, know that you want it all by October, factor that in the fact that that'd be 10 months, so then you need to be definitely putting £50 a month away. But even just making it little and often, it could be £5 a week. And if you put £5 a week in, you'll end up at like, I think 300, nearly 300. So realistically, it is very doable in that sense. And that's something that I would 100% recommend. Starting it often and making it regular. So every monthly, weekly, bi-weekly, something like that. Don't, if you can avoid it, leave it to the last minute, because that's the worst thing you can realistically do. And last off, make it fun. So this, I think, is something that personally I need to do, and I think a lot of people do need to do. So some people have the ability where, you know, they can just put money into an account and that satisfies them. But for me personally, I find that so challenging to do. And so what I do is I use scratch offs and other examples of savings challenges that you can find all over Etsy. You can make them yourself even. And basically I would scratch off all of these and I would save up the amount, and I do that pretty much every week. And so it does help build up, because what I ended up doing is I suffered basically the exact same as this, where I did really well from, say, I think it was probably December to about May. I did really well. I was on track really saving up for 5 Christmases, estimating roughly about £100 each. And then I just stopped for ages, and it wasn't until I got about August, September when I began starting again. So it does happen, it does affect. So making it as fun as possible is something that I could suggest. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to, you know, spend money or anything. It literally could just be, you know, opening up a pack of cards and assigning a value, and that's it. And then that's that done. And by the time you've went through that deck of cards, if it's 52, I think, and so you did a tenner for each card, for example, you'd have £520 by the end of it. And just making it as fun as possible really does help. This is an example, another one, and then like each of these shapes had a different value. And there's all different types. 100% can recommend them. And yeah, that's that. Okay, so that's the end of today's video. I really hope that was helpful for people. I'd love to know in the comments, you know, maybe what's your savings goals for 2025 in terms of Christmas, or what are your just general savings goals? What have you done this year? Is there any other tips that you can recommend to people who might be struggling to save for Christmas? I'd love to know. Feel free to leave them in the comments. But that's all for today's video. So I hope you have a lovely day. Remember that you are absolutely amazing, and feel free to like and subscribe as well. Thank you. Bye.